Welcome to another episode of Just Joshing, the DC Hoop Show. Today we have a very cool guest. My first guest on the show that is from ClutchPoints, which is of course the website I write for. Malik Brown, who he covers the Hawks and the Atlanta Dream in the WNBA. So anyway, Malik, say what's up to the people.
What's up, guys? What's going on, man? Thanks, Joshua, for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So obviously, I had to get Malik on the show because we had a crazy trade not too long ago with Trae Young going to the Wizards and CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert going to Atlanta. CJ and Corey were two of my favorite guys to talk to on the Wizards. Very smart vets, knowledgeable, nice guys. Always had good insights. And now they're in ATL and Trey's in DC. And obviously, there was rumors going on before it happened. And now it's real. Trey already had his intro presser in DC. And, Malik, as someone who covered Trey for a while, I kind of was wondering, what are your insights on what Trey could bring to a new team like the Wizards? And, what are his strengths and what are some things he could work on? And how do you think it is going to go overall?
Yeah, definitely. Well, fun fact, I actually started covering the Hawks when the year he got drafted. So I've seen him grow from his rookie season to, I think this is year 8 now. So, just to see the maturation and everything, it's been pretty cool. The player that he is now, is still a great player, a great playmaker, a good scorer. And I think adding him to the Wizards is even better because when you think about the young core that the Wizards have, all he's going to do is elevate them. And that's kind of what he did last year. He's been doing it all his career, but specifically last season, the Hawks asked him before the season to lead the young guys. They traded for Dyson. So you got a young Dyson. You bring in Zachary Ricochet. And then, of course, you have the other guys like Jalen Johnson, Onyeka, and more guys. But his goal last season was to lead those young guys. And I was very impressed with what he did on and off the court as far as like leading them and, being that guy that always came to the press conferences, whether it was a win or a loss, he was always there and always speaking to the media and being transparent. So off the mature person that he is now, I've really appreciated and seen how he's grown. But the player, we've all seen it. He's averaged 30 and 10, almost 30 and 10 before. And I don't know if he'll do that with Washington, but he could get close to it. And I'm sure that his assist numbers will still be high because when you look, I've been watching the Wizards, of course, over the past few weeks, more than usual, I say, just because I wanted to see what this team was and kind of just what he saw in them as well, because it seemed like he really was interested in going to this team. So, you look at guys like Alex Sarr, I think he's going to be big for Alex Sarr. He's been big for all the centers that have played with the Hawks, Clint Capella, Onyeka, even the early days, Alex Len, Dwayne Dedman. Like, I think he's really had those guys lead to career years. You talk about Trae Johnson and all those guys, and I think he'll really help them elevate their game and make it easier for them. I think that's the best thing. Well, I was kind of thinking about, you think about Chris Paul and what he did when he went to the Thunder that one year, and he helped the guys like Shea,
Right.
Lou Dort, those guys, and they ended up making the playoffs. Before the season, nobody believed they could do it,
Yeah.
and they ended up making the playoffs in the bubble. So I kind of see him in that role. I mean, Chris Paul was kind of older in that time, so I don't want to say he's going to be like an old vet, but he's definitely going to have that type of impact, I think.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned him working with the young guys because I think with Trey, the question is obviously they want him to work with the young guys. That's the whole point of the Wizards right now. But also, he could turn into like a longer term star for them too if it works out. That's what's intriguing about it is the Wizards are a team that's needed a star for a long time. They haven't really had one since the Wall and Beal days. They had Russ for about like 65 games, and then they traded him. So they were starving for a star, and now they got one at least for now. He has the player option next season, which I'm sure he'll take that since it's 49 million, and then they'll probably work on an expansion, but we don't know what that's going to look like. So um, it's interesting to see how that's going to play out, but. I love what you said about how he always make the big men better. Like I wrote a piece about that about Wall was actually saying on TV recently, like he wants Alex Sarr to work with Trae, like how Wall worked with Martian Gortat back in the day, and like he helped Gortat get paid just like Trae helped Clint get paid. That's funny that he played with like Alex Len too. That's a crazy pull. I forgot.
Right.
Like and it's like John Wall and Trae were the similar in terms of they never played with like elite big men like that, but they made the guys where they had better, and I think that Wall is going to do wonders for Sarr, just getting him open looks, like alley oops, all that stuff. Sarr's been taking a huge step this year without even having like a true point guard, so that's exciting for the Wizards to see. But yeah, I think what you were saying about how mature he is and how like he was working with the Hawks young guys, I think that's going to be the key because it's like the Wizards needed like somebody to help them grow up from that perspective, like long term. Of course, they had guys like Marcus Smart for a little bit, CJ for a little bit. They had Chris Middleton still. Those are like kind of the Chris Paul kind of vets you were saying with the Thunder that like they're there for a bit, they help you out, but they weren't like gonna really be driving the bus for like long term on the team. But I need somebody who could be more like, okay, he could be a big piece for like a while if he works out. So I'm interested. Trae's had his critics obviously with maybe not just ball hogging, but like kind of being a dictator. Like I think like I've heard things that he kind of like did things his way with the offense, and it sort of like he had to run the show, and it was like not sometimes there were just rumors that it rubbed guys the wrong way. So I was just wondering what your perspective is on that, like how he can mesh with still taking his own shots, but passing enough to other guys and just meshing well with the guys and not creating any discord.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I do remember kind of earlier in the years where there were some things when John Collins was on the team, and I'm assuming that John maybe was just asking for more ball movement, and that kind of came out as a report and things like that. But throughout his years, Trae has always been a guy with a lot of usage, and it makes sense. He can do a lot with the ball, and he makes a lot of things happen. So it makes sense to kind of have the ball in his hands a lot. And honestly, I don't see him as much of a ball hog, honestly, because I think he is willing to help other players get shots and things of that sort. So I don't really, I'm not too big on the ball hog with him. Like I've seen some real ball hogs before. I just can't really, I've never really seen it from him. But I can understand why some people would take it that way. But no, I definitely think he's going to help the young guys for sure. And they're going to help him at the end of the day. If I'm not mistaken, like the lineups that the Wizards have, they're all like have to be 6'7" and up, or 6'6" and taller. Like that's kind of what you need around Trae. And that's what the Hawks basically tried to do with him these past 2 years, is put length around him, to kind of cover up his defensive deficiencies. At the end of the day, it kind of just didn't work. But at the end of the day, he also has to play defense. He has to show the effort, things of that sort. And I saw him even mention it in his introduction press conference about, he's going to have to help the guys when it comes to defense and things like that and having effort. So I think he's going to be bought in. And I mean, those are the type of things that you want somebody to say that just came on the team. You want them to show that they have effort, that they're going to put they're going to put everything on the line for you at the end of the day. So I think it's going to be good. And if he just shows effort on the defense side of the ball, because that's the one side that everybody always talks about. That's the one side that everybody's been talking about since he got drafted. He's too small, this and that. Like, we get it, and the stats show it. But I think I've always said, if you just show effort. Last year, when the Hawks were like 22-19 and Jalen was still healthy and everything, he was showing effort, and it showed, and the defense was good. It was really good, but of course, Jalen got hurt and things like that, so everything had to shift. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to be good. I don't think he's going to be a ball hog. I think they're going to really enjoy having a player like him, like a true point guard that can get them shots instead of them having to do everything themselves. Granted, it looks like they're doing good with it, but I mean, of course, you just always need that one piece, that one or two piece to kind of take you to the next step. And I think that's what he'll do with the Wizards.
Yeah, it's funny about the defense. Like that's what was so surprising. I think when the whole saga started that they were interested in him was that this Wizards front office, they love guys who will have like positional size and they play defense. They're two-way players, and
Mhm.
Trae isn't any of that. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
like the smaller guy. He's not, he's definitely below average defensively. He's actually probably one of the worst defenders in the league a lot of the time. Um, you know, and that's okay because he's so good on offense, but it just is what it is, and it's just not somebody this Wizards front office, which took over in 2023, is not somebody that kind of archetype wasn't somebody they were really looking at most of the time. But I think with the caveat of Trae still being a star and they needed a star, and they've been trying to get guys from the draft. Obviously, like they try to get Cooper Flag, they didn't get number one. They missed out on Wemby. When he was in the draft. So um you can't just depend on like luck in the draft lottery, right? You gotta give yourself some insurance, and this is what that and that brings me to the next step, which is the trade itself. I actually thought that the Wizards could get draft capital out of the Hawks too, just because they seem to have most of the leverage from negotiating wise, because it didn't seem like Trae had a ton of suitors around the NBA. It seemed like the Wizards were the only serious ones. And everyone knew they wanted to get off the contract. So, but they didn't get any picks and they didn't give up any picks. It was just CJ and Corey. So what did you think? Like, how did you like just from the way the Hawks handled that? Do you think they could have got more, or do you think they did what they should have done?
Like you said, it all comes down to leverage. And looking at the suitors that he had when it was Washington, Brooklyn, Minnesota, I think, I understood Minnesota because it was like, okay, he's going to somewhere that he can win instantly. Brooklyn and Washington were kind of skeptical. I was like, this is interesting, but I'm sure that at the end of the day, I'm sure he wanted his money. They were willing to pay him what he wanted, so I got it. So when the trade actually came through, or folks started talking about what it would be, everybody knew CJ was going to be in it regardless because of just the matching salaries.
Yeah.
Um, and after that, it was okay. It's either going to be maybe you get one of the young guys from the Wizards, or maybe a draft pick, or they draft pick swaps or whatever like that. When you really think about it, the Hawks didn't have any leverage. The Hawks didn't have any leverage.
Yeah.
So the Wizards, I honestly think the Wizards are like, okay, we know this guy is probably gonna opt out or whatever. He can opt out. It's possible. The Hawks are like, Trae could have possibly opted out of the season. The least we can do is try to get something for him. And the Wizards are like, we know he can probably opt out too. So why we give you a draft pick when we know we could probably get him in the free agent market if
Yeah.
he opts out his contract? So the Hawks are like, okay, we kind of just gotta do this at this point, because that is a possibility he leaves and they get nothing for him. So I did also see a report where the Wizards offered a pick, but they also wanted the Hawks to give them a first or something. And the Hawks were like,
Yeah.
we're good. We'll just take Corey. We'll just take the
Right. Right.
contract. We'll just take that contract. So looking at all of that, I get it. I know a lot of people were confused of like, this is Trae Young.
Right.
He's worked at least a pick. Then people are like, oh, Desmond Bane went for 5 picks. Mikal Bridges went for 5 picks.
Right.
Wait, they go for at least one? And it's like, I get it in that, like, when you look at it like that, I get it. But you have to understand he has a player option. He can opt out. Desmond Bane and Mikal Bridges are still on long contracts. It's just, this is
Right.
what it is. And it's
Right.
with that with any player that you kind of want to trade for and things like that. So at the end of the day, Hawks didn't have any leverage. They didn't want to give up a pick. So it was CJ and a contract they probably didn't want, but Corey is still a good player, so they'll take him.
Yeah, it's crazy with today's business in the NBA is so different than previous years, with like the first apron, second apron, all that stuff. It makes it a lot of times more about the money than the players themselves. It's just like with the pick stuff, I know Brett Siegel over with us at CP was like, talking. He wrote an article talking about how they went back and forth negotiating for a while, and the Hawks wanted one of the Wizards' key young guys like Keyshawn George or Koulibaly. Wizards were like, no, sir.
Yeah.
And then both sides I wanted picks out of each other, basically, and they couldn't agree. So it was just kind of a wash. They're, all right, just do the salary straight up.
Mhm.
It's interesting you said they probably didn't want Corey's contract. I think Corey's contract is like pretty team friendly. It's not like it's like 13 million a year for the next few years for a decent scorer off the bench. But if you don't think he's worth the money, then I could see how you think that's a negative contract. I think it's like up for just like interpretation a little bit in terms of what you think is a negative or positive contract value. You know,
Yeah.
with CJ, it's expiring, so that's easy.
Right.
Although I have seen CJ hasn't been doing too hot yet with ATL. So I've seen some Hawks fans have been pretty upset. Uh, I, I saw you had a clip talking to Corey too, talking about how it's just been a crazy time for him, with the trade and everything. I'm just wondering, what do you think about those guys being ATL so far? Of course, it's only been a few days, but how do you think they can help the squad like this season, or maybe with Corey even beyond? Do you think CJ could be a long term guy? Like, what's your deal?
I could definitely I could see Corey for sure. CJ, of course, like you said, everybody's kind of just like been hissing around
Yeah,
CJ like the past couple games, or I mean specifically last game, if we're being honest.
yeah,
But they're professionals at the end of the day. CJ has been in the league for over 10 years. Um, and at the end of the day, you're coming to a new team where it's a new system and you're just having to learn new guys. And I get that part for sure. So it might not look pretty the first game, the third game. In all honesty, I thought CJ played his best game um against the Bucks. That was probably his best game with the Hawks. Of course, everybody, I get it. The last shot was bad, but before that, I think he played a really good game. That was probably his best game. But it's all about communication and getting used to the players. And at the end of the day, he I feel like it has to be this team is about the young guys. So Dyson, Jalen, Onyeka, like those are uh Zachary Ricochet. Like though this is what this team is building for the present, the future, and everything. So if he can come in and be that person that helps them, like how Trae is gonna go and help the Wizards young guys do that, and how he kind of helped the Hawks last year. Of course, CJ and Trae are not the same player, but CJ is a vet and he knows what to do, and he can talk to these guys and help these guys get in situations where they can thrive. I don't know if that's beyond this season. I think he can definitely be that player for the rest of this season. Um, but I at, what CJ brings on the court, he's of course he's a proven scorer. He can get a bucket. I mean, of course, over the past few games, it he doesn't look very comfortable. I don't think he's looked very comfortable because he's at the ball a lot, and I don't think that's really how the Hawks want to play.
mm.
And I think as the time goes by, we'll see him more. He'll get more acclimated and things of that sort. With Corey, um, Corey is kind of just, that shooter that you need, the shooter that can come off picks and shoot. And one underrated thing that I've noticed, he does not care. Like he'll drive, like
Yeah,
he'll go to the basket, create contact. So you gotta love that. And he's a bigger wing, so the Hawks definitely needed that type of size on their team. But I definitely think there are two players that'll help them for the rest of the season and hopefully can help them. They're in the play-in and they could possibly be out. But if they could help them stay in the play-in or even reach higher, I think they could definitely do that.
Yeah, CJ also didn't play too well in the beginning of this season in DC either, and then he started really cooking recently. And I think so much so that the Wizards probably like, all right, we got to chill because they're not trying to win this season. Obviously, they want to get as high of a draft pick as they can. This is an amazing draft class coming up. And they know they even with Trae on the team, they still need to land like one of these star prospects coming up, ideally. So, you know, you know, trading CJ for a guy like Trae Young, who has been hurt this year, they can sit him for a few games, so that'll help them lose for a while. I think Trae will probably play around like 10 games this season for the Wizards. So they just so they can see him kind of run with the young guys before next season. But um I have no doubt that CJ will adjust in ATL. Like you said, he knows what to do. He's a vet. He's a really smart guy. Um, and when he's at his best, he's just such a positive like value kind of player because like I think he's like better off ball guard, but he can also come on the ball like as help out in that realm as well. He can make like pretty much any kind of shot. And also he just like knows how to get to a spot. All that stuff that just comes with like years of being in the game. So I think like you said, it's a matter of him like meshing well, and just kind of like getting used to the guys. Like especially when you're in the middle of the season, it's not easy to adjust like on the fly. Yeah, right. Plus, you just uprooted your whole life. So,
Right.
um,
Exactly.
and then with Corey, it's like, yeah, I love how you say he can drive because he's gotten a lot better at that in recent years. He's not just a spot up shooter. So I definitely think Corey could be a guy that helps them off the bench in coming years. Especially I feel like the Hawks are like always in the playing range. Like once they finally get above that, hopefully building around Jalen Johnson and them, he can be a part of that equation, getting maybe like 10 points a game and stuff like that. But if you had to like kind of grade overall like this trade for the Hawks short term and long term, I gave the Wizards like a B because I thought they still should have got at least like one draft pick out of it because of the leverage they have. But if you like, do you like the trade overall? How would you kind of grade it overall, for this season and then like beyond?
Yeah. I also think I gave it a B as well when
Hmm.
I wrote my trade grades too. I did give it a B. I think I did mention, of course, you want to get more for Trey, but just the situation, like we talked about earlier, Hawks didn't have really much leverage, and they went back and forth on trying to get picks, and they were just at the end of the day, let's just take Corey because we don't want to give a pick. And when you think about that, is more about the Hawks planning for the future and having flexibility. The general manager, honestly, he always talks about. He uses the word optionality, and it's basically just having assets and being kind of not harped up in cap space and things like that. So CJ and Kristaps and Luke, like they're all gonna come off the books. That means the Hawks are gonna have cap space this season. Um, and kind of what they did this past off season, they had cap space and they signed a kill on a good deal, and he's playing above what he's been paid. They got. I feel like they offered Jalen a good contract that isn't crazy. Dyson, Onyeka's on a good deal. Like all of their core players are on good deals, and I think that's what Onsi is really trying to do at the end of the day. Not really overpay, but also not not rushing the process. That's really what it is at the end of the day. Because of course, I'm sure you've seen all the AD rumors and things like that. But last week, Ansi talked and he was like, I love the group. I love the center group that we have. Um, and we're not gonna make a move that kind of jeopardizes our future. Like we're not gonna put a band-aid on it or whatever like that. Like we're not gonna rush the process. So I think at the end of the day, the Hawks got what they wanted. They probably wanted more, of course, which is understandable. But at the end of the day, I think this creates flexibility going into the future. For the Wizards, I think it's good because they get that guy that can take them to the next step, that can help the younger players. And like you said before, Trae Young is a star. So he's gonna put butts in seats. Um, and that's all you can ask for. Cause I mean, Washington, you don't really hear much about Washington. You haven't heard much about them, I mean, for the past few years, but they're building something. Like you see the young players coming up and doing their thing. So just adding Trae is going to make it even better. So at the end of the day, I think both teams were satisfied with what they got, and we'll just have to see how it plays out in the future, like for the next coming years.
And that's what's so interesting about it, right? Like you said, especially as someone who's, this is my second season with the team. It's amazing to see that process that you were talking about how they're building. Like last season was just straight like, we're building the young guys. Like, we got three new rookies, right? Like, it was Alex, Bub, and Keyshawn. Obviously Bilal was in his second season last year, but you know, it was still really early in the process. Like, they just traded Kuzma mid-season. They got Middleton and AJ Johnson. Like, it was, they traded for Marcus Smart. It was like we're just operating like on a still not on that star level yet. Like, we're still kind of low key, just building our assets, hoping to get flag in the draft. That didn't happen, but they still got Trae Johnson, who's a sniper. So this season was when they took that big boy step. Like, okay, we're getting a big time box office contender. And that's just so cool to see because now, like you said, it's gonna sell more tickets. It brings more attention to the team, which you need that for the business. And you've seen guys like Alex and Keyshawn be on like NBA TV more this year, and just like
Right.
just having those, just having more national exposure. A lot of fans now are starting to like really see what's going on in DC. And so just seeing them stick to that process and do so well with that is really cool because it shows you that the front office really they're really executing their vision. And I think Wizards fans have a lot to be excited about. I think with the Hawks too, it's like I like what the new GM is doing. I think he just took over like last year, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I think it kind of reminds me of when the Wizards started and they got off the Bradley Beal's contract, which is one of the worst ever. A lot worse than trades. He actually had a full no trade clause, which
Yeah.
Right.
which he's the one of like 11 players or something that's had that ever, and the rest are all like LeBron and like Hall of Famers. So it was crazy.
Yeah.
That was from the previous front office, but they got off of that, and it kind of reminds me with what the Hawks did now with Trae. It's like they kind of went to him like, all right, we obviously you're a big time guy here in the city, like you've been here for years, but it's just time to move on. Like let's like do something what's best for both of us, and I think now this lets the Hawks sort of open the floodgates to build with the young guys, and they have that pick from the Pelicans next summer, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So, I think both teams have a lot to look forward to. But before we get out of here, I would say just like, what are your predictions? Of course, it's hard to predict, but both for the Hawks and Wizards, like, how are they going to do in the Eastern Conference over the coming years? Whether Corey and CJ are a part of the picture with the Hawks long term, whether Trae's a part of the picture long term. How do you think both teams are going to do, like, outlook wise over the next few years here?
I definitely think for sure they're definitely going to be those teams that you watch out for, like those sneaky teams. I feel like the Wizards more like a maybe sneaky team than the Hawks. Because the Hawks have kind of have formed what they want, and I think they may be a little bit far ahead than the Wizards. So, like you said, they have a draft pick that's really, really good. And then you have the cap space, and then you have a star in Jalen Johnson, and you have a defender and solid outside of the 3-point shooting, I'd say a solid offensive player in Dyson. And you have he'll be going on to a start year next year, but Zachary and Onyeka, like you have a good core that's been together for a few years, and all you need is a few more pieces, maybe one or two pieces to kind of get you in that top six. With the Wizards, like of course we haven't seen all we've seen is what we've seen.
Right.
But what we've seen is going up. Like you can see the improvements and you can see the young players kind of growing. Like I said, the only thing Trae is going to do is elevate them, and with what he does as a scorer as well is going to make everything better. So I definitely think they're going to be one of those teams that are like playing like maybe 8, 9, 10, maybe even higher. You never know. I honestly think they'll be better than the Hornets, and I know that was a random shot, but the have just been like have been bad for a long time, and
Yeah.
I and with the talent they have, it's ridiculous. But at the same time, they just don't have any structure, in my opinion. The Wizards, I feel like, have structure. They've been doing it right, and I feel like when you do it right, you're going to get rewarded. So I definitely see the Wizards being one of those sneaky teams for years to come. And the Hawks, of course, being probably one of those top six or whatever. But you never know. Like the Eastern Conference just shakes. We didn't know that Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton were going to go down at the end of last year. But we also didn't know that the Celtics were still going to be a top 2 seed after everything that they've been through. Like, right. Well, you never really know. And now the Pacers are like one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference. So
yeah,
you just really never know. But for like I said, we can only go off of what we see. And those 2 teams, that's kind of what I predict from those teams.
Yeah, that's because of the Knicks are like terrible right now. Like right. The Celtics should not be number 2 without Tatum, and that's crazy. But that's so funny what you said about Charlotte, because like Charlotte and DC fans are always beefing on X, because they're always saying no, like my rebuild is going better than yours. No, mine's better. Oh my God. It's so funny seeing like fans like rebuilding teams like go at it, because it's a different kind of debate than like winning teams. Yeah, right. It's like, no, my assets are better than yours. You know what I mean? But
no, we're taking harder than you. I promise you, we're taking harder.
But no, yeah, I like Khan for Charlotte though. I have to say that. I do think they probably have to move off of LaMelo at some point. That's another one where it's kind of similar with Trae, but just not in the sense that like that LaMelo hasn't won anything with Charlotte, whereas Trae actually got to the Eastern Conference Finals. But it's just like that point guard that like LaMelo's super talented, but I just don't know if he's the future there. So that's another one I'm interested in. But yeah, I think the Wizards are good from a sense that they don't really have any like questions about their direction, which is really valuable. You can see the clear direction they're going in. I think it's only up from here. And yeah, I do have faith in this new Hawks front office based on what I've seen. That I think, this is a sense where like I feel like this is the previous Hawks front office as well for not moving on from Trae sooner if they wanted something better in return. You know what I mean? And it was the same thing with the Wizards when they had to trade Beal. They had to inherit that, so you can't really fault the new guys for that, So yeah, I think both teams definitely have bright futures. I love Jalen Johnson. I think he's awesome. He had a triple double when he was here in DC. I witnessed it, so he was looking fire. But anyway, I think definitely exciting times for both of these teams. But Malik, tell the people where they can find you.
Definitely, you guys can find me, of course, on Twitter and Instagram _Malik ATL, Clutch Points. I also do some work at Peachtree Hoops, which is SB Nation's Hawk site. So you guys can find my work there. And yeah, man, thank you again, Joshua, for bringing me on. This was fun.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're definitely going to do another one soon. But yeah, overall, the Wizards are going to play the Nuggets on Thursday. Obviously, Trae Young is out through the All-Star break, but should definitely make an appearance sometime this season. But Malik, thank you again for joining. Sayonara.
Appreciate you, man.